or a statement, or an action. The Prophet ﷺ further elucidates on this point by informing us in the authentic hadith in which he says, أَحَبُّ الْكَلَامِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَرْبَعٌ. He says the most beloved speech to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are 4 statements, 4 things that you say Allah loves more than other things that you say. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ has informed us that Surah Al-Ikhlas is equal to this and that part of the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ has told us Ayatul Kursi is more superior and more excellent and more virtuous than other parts of the Quran al-Kareem, even though it's all Allah's speech and it's all from Him. But there are some things that are better than others. And this is clearly stated in which Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَرَبُّكَ يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيَخْتَارُ مَا كَانَ لَهُمْ الْخِيرَةُ Subhanahu wa ta'ala عَمَّا يُشْرِكُونَ. Allah says, and your Lord, your protector, your cherisher, your maker, subhanahu wa ta'ala creates, as we just stated. In other words, He creates all things, all living things. وَيَخْتَارُ But He chooses and He selects. He gives preference to one thing over another. مَا كَانَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ Allah says, it isn't for the slaves to choose. It isn't for the human beings, or the angels, or the jinn, to say what is better than something else, what is more excellent, what is more virtuous, what has a greater reward. Subhanahu, Allah says, how perfect is Allah? How far is Allah removed from any imperfection or defect? Wa ta'ala, and far above that which they associate Him as partners. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, my brothers and sisters in Islam, He has informed us that He created our father Adam alayhi salam, and He gave him preference over other created beings that existed before him. And He commanded those angels who never sin, who never disobey Him, who are made from light, who have no lusts, no desires, no base wills. He told those angels to prostrate themselves to Adam alayhi salam because He gave him virtue. He gave him something that was more excellent over the rest of those angels. And there was someone who was arrogant and who was haughty and was too rebellious and too obstinate to acknowledge and admit what Allah Azza wa Jalla gave preference and excellence over some things. So therefore, we have 2 aspects that we want to speak about in this khutbah here today. The first is the son of Adam above the rest of Allah's creation. And secondly, certain human beings, men and women, that existed and exist in different times that are better than other human beings. Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَّلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَرَزَقْنَاهُم مِّنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. Allah says, indeed, we have graced the son of Adam. Indeed, we have blessed him. Indeed, we were greatly kind to him. We have ennobled him. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ We have carried them through land and through sea. We've allowed man to walk. We've allowed man to fly in these current days today, to travel by sea, to seek sustenance, to seek provision. As Allah says, تَسْتَخْرِجُونَ مِنْهُ حِلْيَةً He says, you take adornments from the sea. Allahu Akbar. People get jewels and gems and pearls from the ocean, let alone the foods that they eat. From the most expensive foods, the most delicious foods, the most tender foods, as Allah says in the Quran, لَحْمًا طَرِيًّا He says, soft, tender flesh you take from the sea. This is from Allah's bounty upon the son of Adam. So we've carried him in land and by sea, and we have provided him with good, lawful provision. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the highlighting point of this verse, وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ He says, and we have given the son of Adam excellence and preference and a status and a virtue above many things that we put into existence. Many things that we made and that we created before him, stronger than him, and a greater number than the son of Adam, we have made the son of Adam better. So therefore, the human being, the son of Adam alayhi salam, has a virtue over many things that Allah Azza wa Jalla created. And this is why this is one of the reasons perhaps, that some of the scholars of Islam said that the righteous human beings are better than the angels. They differ over this issue. Which one is closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Which one has a higher status? Is it an angel of Allah who never disobeys Allah? لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم. Allah says those who are with Him, فَالَّذِينَ عِنْدَهُ, those who are close to Allah, with Allah, they're never arrogant from Allah's worship. And some scholars say that the son of Adam who has lusts, who has base desires, who is prone to be upon mistake and forgetfulness, he's better when he's righteous than these angels. And this is the reason why. Because Allah gave him preference. So therefore the human being is better than many things that Allah Azza wa Jalla made. But among human beings, there are levels and there are ranks. Among the children of Adam, men and women, some of them are better than others. Some of them are more excellent than others. Some are more knowledgeable than others. Some are physically greater in strength than others. And the list goes on. So what is this preference? And what does it mean? And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells me that He's given preference to this person over the next, virtue to this slave over the next, what does that mean? What does that allow me to do? Is that a license for me to behave ignorantly and arrogantly and oppressively? We will talk about this بإذن عز وجل in the next khutbah. أقول ما تسمعون وأستغفر الله تعالى لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه كان غفارا. الحمد لله وكفى وصلاة الله وسلامه على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد. In Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the longest chapter in the glorious Quran, which is from the most comprehensive chapters in the glorious Quran, Allah tells us about many, many things. And from the distinguishing marks of Surah Al-Baqarah is that it is full of ahkam. It is loaded with rulings and regulations, with do's and with don'ts, with halal and with haram. The early revelations in Mecca and in the beginning stages of Medina were mostly full with the mentioning of death, resurrection, creation of the heavens and the earth, creation of man, refuting, rejecting, and refuting the mushrikeen and their false claims that Allah had daughters from the angels, that Allah had partners, that Allah had sons, that Allah commanded them to slaughter their animals like this and leave those animals like that. This is the majority of the topic matter or the content of the earlier surahs that were revealed. But when Surah Al-Baqarah came down, Allah Azza wa Jalla began to teach and explain to the companions many things that they were doing that were wrong and that were incorrect. Some of those were practices of Jahiliyyah. Some things became new rules, new laws. And from those laws is the concept of marriage and divorce. We knew before Al-Islam, the woman in the Arabian Peninsula, the woman in the world, in most places, 9 out of 10 places, didn't mean too much. She didn't mean too much. Most cultures at that time, they considered a woman to be a possession, a material, tangible thing, something that can be replaced, something that can be recycled, something that can be misused and mistreated and used as a means of adornment and enjoyment. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He told the companions that this is wrong. You cannot do that. You cannot oppress those women. You cannot inherit them against their will. And from the things that Allah Azza wa Jalla spoke about is divorce, is at-talaq. And that is because when people marry, they will divorce. When people divorce, they will remarry. It's the nature of the human being to fight and to argue. It is the nature of the son of Adam to disagree, to quarrel. It's by his nature. As Allah Azza wa Jalla says about the son of Adam, وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ جَدَلًا. Allah says the son of Adam debates more than anything else and anyone else. So therefore, if Allah legislates marriage, then it's only a must that He legislates divorce. It doesn't mean that divorce is recommended. It doesn't mean that divorce is obligatory. It doesn't mean that divorce is always the best thing to do and the first option, but it is legislated. And this shows us the perfection of our deen over the deen of the Christians. It shows how our legislation is far superior than their legislation. Whereas they are allowed to marry. It's from their religion to marry. They marry in the church. They marry with the priest. But what happens when it comes to divorce? It doesn't make sense. You allow me to eat food, but you don't give me a solution of removing that food from my body. It's a must. There's one way of the street, there has to be another way of the street. You allow me to marry, my nature is not to agree, not to be in harmony. There's a must to be a divorce. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, from His wisdom, He legislated marriage and he legislated divorce. But the divorce is not how you want it to be, Yahi. The divorce is not how your culture tells you. The divorce is not what your wills explain to you. But the divorce, just like the marriage, is a detailed system. There are rules, there are do's, and there are don'ts. And from those do's, and from those don'ts, and from those rules, is Allah Azza wa Jal, what He has explained to us. الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان. Allah says divorce should be 2 times, just twice, not 3 times. After a man divorces his wife twice, he takes her back, and they still cannot get along, they cannot live in harmony, they cannot live peacefully, amicably together, then there's 1 or 2 options, no third option. He says, فَإِمْسَاكٌ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. Either you hold those women in goodness, live with your wife upon kindness, or you let her go upon kindness. As for keeping her in the balance like a pendulum, swinging from side to side, she doesn't know whether she's married, she doesn't know whether she's divorced, you don't provide for her, you don't do nothing for her, but you will not let her go to be married, to live happily. Allah says, no, do not do this. And Allah then tells us that when there is divorce, and the man wants to take his wife back, He says that the husbands have the right to take them back instead of their guardians and their fathers and their brothers. In other words, a man divorces his wife, and a week goes by, or 2 weeks goes by, and he feels bad, he regrets. He wants to take his wife back. And he says, I want to take you back out of the iddah period. But her husband, or excuse me, her father says, no. My daughter is now living with me. You cannot take her back. You divorced her, you mistreated her, you didn't appreciate her, khalas. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَبُعُولَتُهُنَّ أَحَقُّ بِرَدِّهِنَّ فِي ذَا. Allah says, their husbands deserve to take them back before their guardians. There's one of the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who married another companion off to his sister. As Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah has mentioned in his book Al-Jami'. So he married the man to his sister, and that which is apparent from the narration is that she was a very beautiful woman. She was a very pious woman, and there was a very good situation that he allowed that man to have being married to his sister. So therefore they fought, they argued, they couldn't get along, and he divorced that woman. The girl went back to her brother's house. The man felt bad. He had remorse. He had regret. And he says, I wish to take my wife back, and inshallah we'll work it out and we'll get along. The companion, and this shows you some of the virtues of the companions. Even in the issues in which they weren't that educated in before Allah sent that revelation, but they had good character. They came from good stock. The companion said, he says, Alam ukrimka, alam uzawwijka. He says, have I not honored you? Have I not blessed you? Did I not put you with my sister? Did I not marry you off to my sister? He says, La tatazawwaju bi abadan. He says, you'll never take her back. You mistreated her. Because he had a sense of jealousy. He had a sense of care for his sister. That he blessed this man with his beautiful, righteous sister, and he didn't appreciate the gem that he gave her, that he gave him. Allah Azza wa Jalla then sent down that verse. When you divorce, and we should take your wives back, the husbands have the right. The man, he instantly, immediately took his hands away from the situation. He said, khalas, that's your wife. Look how the companions responded to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His culture told him one thing. His customs told him something else. What he felt was right and what was wrong. When Allah spoke, he instantly submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words. And that's why they were the companions. That's why they reached that level of excellence and awesomeness in their iman. So now you may ask the question, what is the relation between this part of the khutbah and the first part of the khutbah? About preference, about levels, about one human being more virtuous over the next. Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us in this same surah, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ وَاللَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. Allah says, وَلَهُنَّ. He says, belonging to women, our mothers, our wives, our sisters, our aunts and nieces and daughters, the Muslimat, the believing women, Allah says, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ. He says they have similar rights. Rights that are similar to them, that they own, that they deserve over the rights that are over them. Similar rights. In other words, the man has rights over his wife. The man He deserves certain things from his wife. The responsibilities that she must fulfill for her husband. So therefore the son of Adam, because he's ignorant, because he's oppressive, because often he's very tyrannical, he may say, well, I'm better than my wife. I have rights over her khalas. Her rights are not important to me. But Allah, He does away with this misconception and this confusion. He says those women have rights that are similar to the rights that the husbands have over them. He didn't say they're the same rights. He didn't say they're equal, 101% on both sides, but He says mithlu. He says they're very similar. Allah Azza wa Jalla even says bil ma'ruf, in a good manner. That which is good according to your customs, according to your well-being. What you see is a good thing to do and good thing to practice, as long as it does not go against Kitab and Sunnah, then it is from the rights of your wife over you. Allah then says, وَلِلْرِجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. But men have a slight edge over women. Men have some preference, some virtue, some excellence over their wives. The women are not oppressed. They're not to be wronged. They're not to be disrespected. They're not to be neglected. But the man's rights, the man's status, and his virtue, Allah says, وَلِلْرِجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. He says they have a daraja. What is that daraja? What is that rank? What is that status? Allah did not explain it in this verse in the Quran. And that is why the people of the past, they differed over what's meant by that. Some of the ulama, before we go to what the ulama said, a person reads the Quran, he may say, well, therefore I can do whatever I want to my wife, because I'm better than her, as Allah said. You get in an argument with your wife, you open up the Mus'haf and say, look right here. My rights are more than your rights. They come before your rights. They are above your rights. Is this the proper understanding of this verse? Many of the companions and the pious, rightly guided predecessors, some of them said that what's meant by this verse, وَلِلْرِجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ الْجِهَادُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, is the man is commanded and allowed to fight in Allah's cause. In other words, a woman is not necessarily, we didn't say all of the time, we said necessarily a warrior like a man, a physical warrior. A woman has to be a warrior with her iman, without a doubt. Fighting the shaitan, fighting the devil, fighting evil, conquering evil and vice, whatever it may be, even with her own husband. As many of the pious women of the past, some of them would say to their husbands when they left the house, when they wanted to leave the house in the morning, as Imam al-Dhahabi quoted, there was a woman from the Salaf, she used to say to her husband every morning, she would say to him, اتق الله ولا تطعمنا إلا من الحلال. She would say, fear Allah, husband, and don't bring back any food unless it's permissible. Fear Allah regarding us. Don't feed us from the haram. Don't feed us from alcohol. Don't feed us from swine. Don't feed us from usury. Do not feed us from the filthy, nasty drugs that you sell on the street. Don't bring that back to this home. So a woman has to be a warrior. But the physical battle, jihad in Allah's cause, the Prophet ﷺ explained to Aisha radiallahu anha and the other women from the Sahabiyat. He says, jihad kunna al-hajj wal-umrah. He says, your jihad is hajj and umrah. As for the physical struggle, being wounded, killing, being killed, losing an arm, losing an eye, losing a leg, as one of the companions was narrated, he lost his intestines. His belly was ripped open and he grabbed it and tried to put it back in to continue fighting in Allah's cause. That's not for the woman. So some of the ulama said that this verse means, وَلِلْرِجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ, the men have a virtue over the women, is that men are given the chance to receive martyrdom, which is from the greatest acts of worship in Allah's deen, period. It's to die in Allah's cause. And that's not necessarily the case for a woman. Other ulama said that what's meant by this verse, وَلِلْرِجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ يَعْنِ الْمِيرَاثِ, is that a man inherits more than a woman. A man's share in his lot from the inheritance of his father or mother or whatever the case may be is greater. And it's because his responsibilities are greater. Other ulama, and it's a very interesting fact, they said, وَلِلْرِجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ يَعْنِ الْلِحْيَةِ, men have a virtue and a rank over women through beards. In other words, for Allah allow you to grow a beard is a means of preference over women. Is a means of excellence and virtue over women. Let's make an example of this. What is the animal that we say is the king of the jungle? The first person or the first animal we mentioned is the lion. The lion that has a mane. It's not like the lion that doesn't have a mane. They're not the same. And the way you look at the animal, the all that you have from the animal, it's not the same. And this is what N.Y.C explains with regards to the beard. And the harms of shaving the beard, he says that it's an imitation of women. And the beard is a means of haiba, is a means of awe. When you see a man with a beard, you have respect for him. You look at him, don't mess with him. His beard, full beard, not like this, a boyish face. They're not the same. So some of them have said that this is from the virtue of the man over the woman, is that he's allowed to grow a beard and have respect. And that takes his appearance away from the appearance of a boy and away from the appearance of a woman. So the point that we're trying to get to is that the rights of the men are very simple and very easy. And the rights of the women are also very simple and very easy. But how many Muslims are in these rights? How many of us don't know what these rights are? To make things brief, because this is a khutbah, this isn't a lecture, the rights of the man over his wife is that she obey him and everything that is good, everything that is wholesome, everything that is not haram, that is not a vice, that is not against Allah's deen, the woman must obey her husband in that. From the rights of the husband over his wife is that when he wishes to be with her and he calls her to his bed, as the hadith says, his bed, is that she responds to him. She doesn't make an excuse. She doesn't behave in a bad way which will turn him away from her. But when he wishes to be with her intimately, she responds to him. From the rights of the husband over his wife is that she protect his wealth, and she protect his honor, and she keep his secrets, and that his wealth is valuable. She doesn't spend his money foolishly. She doesn't act as a spendthrift, but she regards his property as sacred. Anything that's between him and her as a man and a wife stays in the home. She doesn't get on the phone and call her girlfriend about what happened. She doesn't tell her friends on Facebook and Instagram and this and that, my husband this, my husband that. La. Her secrets remain in her home. And it's from the greatest rights of the husband over his wife. And the woman that tells other people about what goes on in her household, her secrets, this imam, fulan, is not a righteous woman. Abadan. She's not a righteous woman. Because Allah clearly stated in the Quran that they are hafidats. They guard what Allah has allowed them to guard. They're sacred, they're pious. These are from the rights of the husband over his wife. If Allah provides them with children, she raises those children. She respects those children. She loves them. She nurtures them. And she teaches them the proper practice of Islam. These are all from the rights that the husband had over his wife. As for the woman's rights over her husband, then in brief, first and foremost, it is upon him to live with her in a good, honorable manner. Not to mistreat her, call her bad names, beat her, abuse her, disrespect her, and degrade her. La. When you wish to speak to your wife, you should speak to her in the best names, the best things, the softest way, the easiest tone. Not with anger, not with an attitude problem, leave me alone, let me be, I'm stressed out, stop bothering me. La. Allah says, وَعَاشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Treat women, deal with women in a kind, honorable manner. From the rights of the wife over her husband is that he provide for her, and that he spend upon her. And what's meant by providing and spending are the following four things. In summary, number one, her food. Number two, her drinks. Number three, her clothing. Number four, her place of stay, her lodging. You must provide your wife with a house or an apartment. You must provide her with clean, comfortable Islamic clothing. You must feed her from good, halal, nourishing foods and drinks that are refreshing and good for her to drink. If you do not provide these things, you have not fulfilled the rights of your wife upon you. And many of these things will be based off of your culture and the time in which you live in and your financial situation. The man who's wealthy should feed his wife with foods. The man who's struggling, who's tight, he doesn't have a lot of money, he gives what he can. Whether it's bread and water or whether it's steak, whatever he can give her, that's what he gives her. And some of the ulama of today have explained that from the rights of the wife over the husband is that he provide and take care of her medical needs and expenses. Medicine, going to the hospital, going to the herb store, whatever medical treatment that you use, they say the husband must come out of his pocket and pay for the woman's medical expenses. From the rights of the wife over the husband is that he teach her her deen, and that he educate her, and he teach her about Islam to the best of his ability. If you do not know too much about the deen, then put your wife in a situation in which she is able to learn. Allow her to go to the masjid. Allow her to take the lectures, to get the benefit in which you can learn about Islam and the Quran. Because it's a benefit for yourself, it's a benefit for your children. And very important etiquette is that the man take care of his wife's desires. He must keep her chaste. He must keep her mind and her eyes and her body away from the haram. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He tells us, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Indeed, successful are the believers. Who are these believers? Allah says, those who have khushu in their prayer, those who turn away from level by idle talk, those who give zakat, so on and so forth. Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ. And those who guard their private areas, those who protect their chastity. And some of the ulama have explained that this verse means, or we can benefit and extract from this verse, is that the man who does haram, in most cases, will not protect his wife from haram. The man who doesn't remain clean, he doesn't suffice himself with Allah made permissible, in most cases that will be the case with his wife. And that is because when he has a taste for haram, and a desire for haram, very seldom will he have a desire for the haram. Because the haram is more. It's more exciting, more seducing, more attracting, easier. No responsibilities attached to the haram. So why should I go through this problem, this responsibility for the halal? So when he is not intimate with his wife, he does not protect her, he does not fulfill her desires, then that's what will happen to the woman. This is a very serious issue with regards to marital rights in the kitab and in the sunnah. And what I intend in this khutbah, ya akhi, do not think, because Allah said that you have rights over the wife, and that you have a level over the woman, and that you're protectors and maintainers, don't think that you're to behave as a tyrant. And that you have total domination, you have monopoly over your wife. Do not think that. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ told you, رِفْقًا بِالْخَوَارِيرِ. He says, be gentle with those glass bottles. Be gentle with the vase. Be gentle. Do not be oppressive. Do not be excessively harsh and exceedingly critical with regards to your wife. Because Allah Azza wa Jalla is over you. As Allah tells in the Quran, فَإِنْ أَطَعْنَكُمْ فَلَا تَبْغُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ سَبِيلًا. And Allah says, if they obey you, if they're good to you, then do not oppress them any further. Because Allah is exalted, He's above you. And He has Qadir, He's omnipotent. Allah is more powerful. So therefore, don't think that just because you're stronger than your wife, or you're above your wife, there isn't someone who's stronger or above you. I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to allow the Muslims to fulfill these rights. Ameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to clearly see the rights that we have for us and against us. Ameen. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to allow us to see these rights, those that are for us and those that are over us. Ameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring us harmony in our marriages. Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ameen. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to fulfill our marriages and to allow them to be full of good acts of worship and obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are pleasing to them. Ya Rabbal Alameen. That's Allah Azza wa Jalla to forgive the Muslims and have mercy upon all of them wherever they may be. Ya Rabbal Alameen. Wa subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa aqimus salat.